welcome once again to Byron's Vego cooking show. I'm Byron. Today I'm making an old favourite, it's a family favourite of mine. My mum makes this recipe, as do my siblings and obviously myself. This one is going out to my mate Johnny. He's been asking me for ages to do this, so Johnny, this is for you, mate. I'm making spinach pie. So I'm going to use some puff pastry. I'm going to use some frozen spinach. Now obviously fresh is best, but at the moment I don't really have enough spinach in my garden for this recipe, so I'm just going to use 2 boxes of the frozen stuff. Now there's nothing wrong with that, it tastes good. Yeah, no issue with using that. I've got brown onion and I'm going to use some jar garlic. Now once again, yes, fresh is best, but I find that garlic, it expires reasonably quickly. And I hate going to the shop, right? So I go to the supermarket, I'll buy like half a dozen jars of garlic, and then I know it's there when I need it. I'm going to use cottage cheese. Over the years I've tried a bunch of different cheeses. I've done feta, I've done ricotta, but lately I've been using cottage cheese and I find it works really well. Compared to those other cheeses, it's lighter, it's cheaper, and for this recipe it works fine. I've also got here mushrooms. I love mushrooms. I put them in nearly everything I make. So I've got 8 of them here. Now you can put whatever you like in this really. It works really well with a bit of red capsicum, and I often do put that in there, diced really finely. But I haven't got any at the moment, so I'm just going to do it simple. Sometimes simple is the best. Now I should also acknowledge what's going on up here. Yes, I'm aware of just how bad this haircut is. I actually did it myself the other day. I did the clippers and I started and I realised that I didn't have the guard on and I had this really short patch here, and so I had to get my sister to come around and do one of these ones. So yeah, now I look like some kind of footy player. It wasn't intentional, but there it is. Nothing I can do about it. So you know, we've covered that now, so you know, no need to comment on that anymore. Okay, so what I'm going to do first is I'm going to cut up my onion and my mushrooms. Actually, what I'm going to do first is, this is frozen, and I need to unfreeze that. So I'm going to put it in the microwave. Okay, so just like that, and I'm going to cover it. I'm going to put it in the microwave for about 10 minutes, and that should be enough to unfreeze it. Okay, so the spinach is in the microwave now, so I'll get back to cutting up my onions. Don't have to be too fine, but you know, reasonably fine. And the mushies. Once again, you want to cut the mushrooms reasonably small, but you know, they don't have to be ridiculously small. Okay, so while I'm doing this as well, I've got my oven preheating. Sometimes, you know, depending on your model of your oven, it might take anywhere between 10 and 20 minutes. So I've got my oven preheating. I'm going to bake it at 200, and that's in a fan forced oven. So in a standard non-fan forced oven, you might be looking at about 220. Okay, so I've diced up my onion and my mushrooms now. I'm still waiting on the spinach, which shouldn't be much longer. It's in the microwave, and then once that comes out, I'm going to fry it all up together. Because the reason we do this is because a lot of these veggies, they contain a lot of moisture. So we fry them up and try and get rid of some of that excess moisture, because we don't want a soggy pie, yeah? So I'll, like I said, when the spinach comes out, we'll go over to the fry pan and we'll fry it down and get rid of some of that moisture. Okay, so I've just taken the spinach out of the microwave. I put it in for about 10 minutes, but after about 8 minutes, looks pretty good, so I put it out. So that's it here. So what I'm going to do now, like I said, I'm going to fry it all up over here on the fry pan, so I've got that going. That's nice and hot now. Okay, so I'm just frying this up in some olive oil. I'll give that a minute, get the oil nice and hot. Okay, so I'm just going to add the onion. onion, just going to add some of that garlic. As you can see, I like a lot of garlic, nothing wrong with that, it tastes great. Adding salt and pepper. Obviously it's a matter of taste, how much salt and pepper you like. I'm a big fan of pepper. I generally tend to probably use too much of it, if anything. Alright, so mushrooms are in there. Okay, so while I'm doing that, I've put my puff pastry out on the bench. Now I left the packet out to defrost a little before I separated the sheets. Sometimes with the frozen puff pastry, if you try to separate it while it's still frozen, you'll snap your sheets. Yeah, so just let it defrost for a couple of minutes, and then you can separate your sheets, and you shouldn't have any problems. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to add this spinach now. Get it all out of there. Now, like I said, there's a lot of moisture in this spinach, so you want to give it a good fry. Dry it out a bit. Stop our pie going soggy. Now you can do this recipe with silver beet, baby spinach, English spinach, whatever you've got, it doesn't really matter. It's all good stuff. Okay, so at this stage I'm going to add some of my special homemade hot sauce. Now I've got a bunch of chilies there, so I'm actually going to make a batch of this for my next episode, so we'll get to that. And I'm also going to add a little bit of pesto. Now, with this recipe, you know, a lot of people add different spices to it. I like pesto. I'm a pesto fan. You can do it with, you know, other herbs or spices if you like, but I'm just going to put a couple of splashes of hot sauce, which I just use as a condiment. You know, I put it in a lot of my cooking, and I'm just going to, you know, put a spoon or so of pesto in. You don't want to go too heavy on the pesto because it's quite strong. So, you know, a generous teaspoon is probably all you need. That'll do. Now that's starting to smell pretty great. Now it's almost been on there long enough, I think. Give it another minute or so. Okay, so that mix is really hot. So we're not going to put it straight into the puff pastry because it'll kind of mangle the pastry a bit. So we need to cool the mix down. So what I do is I put it on a plate and spread it out all over the plate, and then just put the plate in the freezer for like 10 minutes or so. And that should be enough to bring it down to room temperature, and then we can put it into the puff pastry without causing too much problem. Okay, so I spread that out. Mix is tasting pretty good. Well, like I said, I'll put it in the freezer for about 10 minutes, bring it down to room temperature. Then we can mix it up with the cottage cheese, put it in the pastry, get it in the oven. Okay, so I've taken that out of the freezer now. It's come down to room temperature. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to mix it up in a bowl with this cottage cheese. And then I'm also going to add a couple of eggs. And I'd like to thank my mate Dean. He brought me these eggs from his parents' place. Thanks very much. They're delicious. So get all that cottage cheese out of there. Now the eggs aren't 100% necessary. You can get away without them, but I just find just binds everything together, and it enhances the flavour. It makes it a bit richer. But yeah, they're not essential, but I like to do it with a bit of egg. Okay, so now I'm going to add the breadcrumbs, and what these do is they make it they dry it out a bit. They make the mix go a little bit further, and they kind of again, they sort of bind it together as well with the eggs, make it a bit more, just like your sort of solid pie mix rather than being, a bit sloppy. And I might just add a little bit more of the breadcrumbs. Yep, that looks pretty good. Okay, next step, I've got the baking tray, and I'm going to spray on some spray on olive oil. Just give it a nice coating, just like that. Stick it right in the middle. Now what we're doing is just putting the mix in there. Now this mix should be enough for about 3 pies. I hope. I've put enough pastry out for 3 pies, so I hope it's enough. Might do 2. Now you want to leave a bit of a gap around the edge because we're going to fold that edge over, so yeah, leave some room for that. Yeah, that's about right. Okay, so now what we're doing is just pushing the pastry together with my fingertips. Now I do it like this. I've done it in a bunch of different ways over the years, but I do it like this now because it sort of maximises how much you get out of your pastry. I've done it in dishes and stuff before, and you end up cutting the pastry and you end up with leftover bits. So I just do it this way, and there's no wastage. So that's why I like to do it like this. But you can do it any way you like. They go good in triangles. They go good, pretty much doesn't really matter. I sometimes do them in like kind of, sausage roll sort of style. But this is how I usually do it. So once you've pressed it down, you just fold it over, press it down again. Just ensures it's not going to come undone and ooze the filling out. Okay, so that's done. The next thing I do is just give it another spray with that olive oil. And then give it a good stab with a fork. And that just allows the air to get out. And that's ready for the oven, so let's stick it in. Okay, so that's in there now. It doesn't take ages. I'm going to give it 15-20 minutes, and then I'll flip it over and we'll put it back in. Okay, so it's looking pretty good. It's nice and golden brown on top, but I find underneath won't be cooked quite so well, so what I do is I flip it. So the way I do that, get a couple of spatulas, get under it like that, Just give it one of those. You can see what I mean. It's still a little bit underdone on the bottom. I'll stick it back in for a few more minutes, but it won't be far off now. Okay, so that's come out, it's looking pretty good. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put it on this chopping board and cut it up, just like that. Just going to use my pizza slicer for this, it works pretty well. Okay, so that's it. I've plated it up with some lovely salad. Real simple, just some rocket leaves, some cucumber, grated carrot, tomato, olives, and then I've just splashed it with some balsamic vinegar and some lemon juice, drizzled a little bit of extra virgin olive oil on it and some salt and pepper. And that looks pretty delicious, so that's going to be my lunch. Thanks again for watching Byron's Vego cooking show, and I'll see you next time.